Well, hello, and welcome once again to another edition of Pray on This. I'm your host, John Pray. Before I get going, hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications, or come over and join me on Rumble. And always share the videos. It helps the channel, it helps get my voice out there, and it helps keep conservative voices on the internet in Canada. Because we all know that our cockwomble Prime Minister Justin Trudeau wants to silence anybody who dissents against him. So, I just got home from sunny Southern California. It wasn't overly sunny, but it wasn't overly cloudy, and no, smoke from Canadian forest fires had nothing to do with it. But I thought it was going to be a bit of a slow news week. I figured that, there'd be some talk about, climate change and how that was causing forest fires. And I figured there'd be a bit of blowback from David Johnson's 3 hours at the parliamentary committee. But, before I left, he had made it pretty damn clear he was going nowhere. But I wasn't expecting last week. I really wasn't. First of all, I noticed that the Prime Minister and our Environment Minister, Stephen Guilbeault, with their big push on this is climate change, wasn't getting as much traction as he's got in the past. Yes, mainstream media did push his agenda. However, the number of arsons or accidental fires set by man is starting to really come out. It's also coming out that Justin Trudeau, in his ungodly spending, has somehow forgot to spend money on proper forestry management, and that there's been brush piling up and deadfalls in the forests that at one point in time Forest Canada would clean up, but there's no money for that now. So, even forest fires set by lightning strikes, and yes, they do happen, the boreal forest actually needs to burn to regenerate, to grow again. A lot of people don't know this, but a lot of the conditions were set by man himself, not climate change. That's not resonating. It's falling on deaf ears. I know the Truanons are all over it, but it's not convincing a lot of the rest of us. Then we get to David Johnson, and I watched his 3 hours in committee. He looked horrible. His stance that he was hired by the Prime Minister and that his job is to report to government and he is not subject to the will of Parliament did not go over well. His conflict of interest and how he used the Honorable Frank, and I always screw up saying his name, Akabuchi, who is a former Supreme Court Justice, but also a member of the Trudeau Foundation, telling Mr. Johnson that, you don't have a conflict of interest. Well, that was already highly suspect and dubious to begin with. But during the committee, it came out that Mr. Ikabuchi and Mr. Johnson have been personal, close friends for 56 years. I don't think that was the best person to go to for legal advice, David. You should have known better in the first place. You were a law professor. You were the president of 2 major Canadian universities. You were the governor general. You know the laws of this country. You taught a lot of today's litigators. But it never even occurred to you that you yourself could be in conflict of interest? Shows a lot about your judgment. And quite truthfully, it did damage your reputation. But after that nail in the coffin, then we get to the next nail in the coffin, which was your use of Sheila Block, Ms. Sheila R. Block. And your defense of her was, well, she's an excellent lawyer. That's why I hired her to be my special counsel. Did you even look into her? Did you look to see what her political leanings were before you hired her for this job? Did it not occur to you that investigating Chinese election interference that specifically was designed to help the Liberal Party of Canada maintain power, that it may not be in your best interest to have your chief legal counsel be a major supporter and donor of the Liberal Party of Canada. She has a 25-year history of supporting the Liberal Party, both during elections and with financial contributions, up to and including attending a $1,000 or $1,500 per plate fundraiser where the keynote speaker was Justin Trudeau. You were spending that kind of money so you could have an intimate dinner with the Prime Minister. That's not really good, Mr. Johnston. It looks horrible. And finally, he hired Navigator to handle crisis management for him when people weren't buying what he was selling. That's probably $1 million of taxpayer money that he spent. Wow. All to try and get you out of the hot seat? You're an incredibly intelligent man. You had a stellar reputation. You were definitely respected. I respected you immensely. I thought that you were an incredible Governor General, especially in the face of who you replaced and who replaced you. But that reputation is in tatters now. I guess you were flattered that at 81 years old you could still be useful to the country that you love. But you didn't take a look to see what you were being asked to do, who was asking you to do it, the fact that you were close personal friends with the current Prime Minister's father, that you've known the current Prime Minister since he was a little boy, that your children have skied with him, that you've given him rides home, that he, when you were principal at McGill, was able to get in and see you basically whenever he wanted. I guess that really didn't dawn on you that you were not the right man for this job. It definitely shows a lack of judgment on your case to going to Frank Akubuchi, a close personal friend of 56 years, to get a legal opinion as to whether or not you were in a conflict of interest, who also happened to be a fellow Trudeau Foundation member, or hiring a big-time Liberal supporter and donor as your chief legal counsel. It all stunk to high heaven. No one believes what you put out, which is a shame, because I believe that in your heart you are a decent and respectable man. But you didn't behave like it in this case. And I hate to say this, but I'm glad you resigned. I hope that you can find a little bit of dignity left in what you had thrown away trying to save your best friend's child. Moving on from that, there was also something that happened while I was away. Josh Alexander, the young 17-year-old who has been kicked out of an Ontario school for having the audacity to say the truth, that there are only two biological sexes, and that a boy cannot become a girl, nor a girl become a boy, and saying that he believed it was wrong to allow biologically born boys who hadn't even started to medically transition just showed up one day and said, "I'm now Julie, not John. And I'm a girl. Treat me as such. Be allowed to use the washrooms of the gender that he says he is." He also said it was wrong that none of the biological female students were being asked their opinion of this. Just shut up and do what the administration tells you. Mr. Alexander was, they say, not expelled yet. He was administratively removed from school and not allowed to attend for the rest of the year. He was expelled, and he was expelled for having views that don't fit the woke culture. Well, he organized a protest. He organized it at an Ottawa area school. And the basis of the protest is that schools should be education, not indoctrination. Well, there was a counter protest to this. The date of the protest was chosen because we're in Pride Month. I have no idea how Pride got from being a day to a week to a whole month. What I do know is this, is that when Pride began, I actually agreed with it. I, after some serious consideration, came to the conclusion in the early 2000s that love is love. And that who am I to say who someone should sleep with or live their life and share it with? And why shouldn't they have the same legal recognition of their relationships as any other couple? I was against my party of choice stand against the original bill which allowed same-sex marriage. However, I was very proud of my party that any possibility of taking those rights away from people has always been shot down by my party. Yes, we have allowed private members to bring forward private member bills, but they have never been supported en masse by the Conservative Party, and today they are not supported at all. But the reason for Pride has been accomplished. It was a hard fight. It was a noble fight, and it was won. What Pride has become now is nothing more than a display, a month-long display of sexual perversions. And I know that that stance is not popular. It's cost me friends, both heterosexual and homosexual friends that I have had. It has cost me arguments with family members. But I will say this, my daughter, who is a lesbian, actually agrees with me. The whole basis for Pride has already been won. Why are we still having Pride Month? Why do homosexuals have to have a whole month to express who they share their lives with instead of just living their lives? Because that's not what Pride's about anymore. Pride's about celebrating whatever sexual perversion you want to have and push it on the rest of us. The Pride Parade in Toronto last year horrified me. Whether it was the man who was walking down the street wearing a costume where between his legs there was a vagina and his head was a penis, and he would stop every 10 feet and insert the penis into the vagina. Or the man wearing the bunny mask and nothing else but a pair of shoes, walking nude down the street and talking to children. Whether it is Drag Time Story Hour, which, I'm sorry, drag is an art form and a lovely art form, but it's for adults, and that's where it belongs, is in an adult cabaret. What's next? Should we have stripper story time? Should we have strippers, exotic dancers, also at the library in their work costumes, which I have attended and I have frequented in my youth, strip clubs, gentlemen's clubs, they're now called. And I will say this, most exotic dancers don't wear a lot onto that stage. Would we be okay as a society of that? Would we be okay as a society with performances by strippers where they keep their clothes on or go down to a very small bikini and a G-string, and then they lap danced on 8 or 9-year-old boys or 8 or 9-year-old girls, as we have seen drag queens do? I think the answer would be no. I also think that there is indoctrination going on in our schools. I have run into teachers who are extremely left-wing, who are supporters of this. And I have several friends who are teachers who are totally against it. And when I ask them, what's it like when this is brought up to you that you should be teaching this at school. Most of my friends sit there and say they don't want to do it, but basically it's shut up and do your job and do as you're told. So it is indoctrination going on. Well, at this protest, there was a counter protest of trans allies who were screaming for trans rights. There was some violence, and there were 6 arrests made. Now, I want to make it very clear that of the 6 arrests, it was those protesting for the rights of trans and for the indoctrination to continue that were arrested. But it was also attended by member of provincial parliament, New Democrat MPP Joel Harding, who claims that he was punched in the face. He put a Twitter claim up of it. He's got a small cut under his eye, a small red mark on his cheek. It's under this eye. The small red mark is right here. But the real question is, did he really get punched in the face? Or is he another Jesse Smollett? Because quite truthfully, at that protest, everybody had their camera phones out. Everybody was taking video. No one got this punch on video. But what I do know is that Mr. Harding was quick to tweet and punching people in the face, but I'll take a punch for queer and trans youth any day. It was retweeted by Merritt Stiles, the leader of the Ontario NDP. She said, "Hope you're okay, Joel. Hateful so-called rallies outside our schools are becoming far too common. It's boiling over into violence. It's well past time to take urgent action to protect 2SLGBTQAI plus youth. Thank you to everyone that showed up today. Protect trans kids." Leader NDP Jagmeet Singh also tweeted similar things. However, I want to know whether or not this actually happened. Because first he said he was punched in the face. Then he claims that a woman glanced into his megaphone and that's what hit him in the face and cut him. And I don't want this woman charged. I'd rather talk about why she needed to be violent and why she needed to protest outside public schools. Quite truthfully, the story is changing way too much. And I've seen a video of Mr. Harding holding the megaphone like this. And I can see the holder for the walkie-talkie part, the microphone, touching his face. And I know that's what cut him. I know that because when I was a younger man, I participated in blood sports. I was a boxer. I was an amateur wrestler. I have had fisticuffs on the street. I've had hockey fights. So I've been punched in the face. I've been elbowed in the face. I got that in wrestling. I've been punched in the face both boxing with gloves on, and I've been punched in the face in a hockey fight with no gloves on. I have never received a cut from being punched. I've had very puffy eyes. I've had extreme swelling. And I can say this, Mr. Harding, there's no swelling on your cheek. There's no swelling on your face whatsoever. There's a cut. It's a cut from a sharp instrument. You weren't punched. You're a liar. Plain and simple. And I'll say that in all confidence. And if you want to say that I'm wrong, please take me to court. Sue me. Because I guarantee you, you're the liar. There is such violence towards trans children and the 2S LGBTQ community in this country that a sitting MPP for the New Democratic Party had to manufacture a hate crime. Yes, I said it. Manufacture a hate crime. And the reason I know this is a hate crime and it's manufactured is this. This would be mother's milk to the CBC or to Global News or to CTV or to the Toronto Star. But there's no huge write-ups about it. There's no front page news. There's no breaking news on the 6 o'clock news. There's no demands of the Ottawa police to track down the assailant and arrest them. There's a few small little things. And then there's one article in the Toronto Sun that asks, were you really assaulted, Joel Harding? Or were you not? It's a really good question, and we all know the answer. The left is still playing games. It's time for this to end. That, as always, is Pray on This.